Dr. Han Ren, welcome to Podcastina.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. It's so good to meet you in person.
It is. I'm so glad we live in the same town. We could do this in person.
Yeah, me too. I'm going to probably jump in to the thick of it. As a therapist, what is like your working definition of perfectionism?
Ooh, I really love Prentice Hemphill's definition, which is perfectionism is the commitment to habitual self-doubt.
Ooh,
Yeah, because you're never going to reach it. You're always going to guess. You're always going to second guess. And you're always going to fall short and you're never going to feel good enough. So what are you hiding from?
it's so interesting because perfectionism for me, I think I didn't identify it for the longest time because I thought, well, if I'm not perfect, if I'm not doing things perfectly, how can I be a perfectionist?
Yeah. But it's the commitment to trying.
And in what ways does that manifest for people?
Overworking, people pleasing, self-abandonment, pushing past your body's limits, saying yes when you really want to say no, feeling dissatisfied with your life, not knowing what enough feels like to be able to stop before you get to that place of burnout or too much. Yeah.
It's hard to, I guess, like look at that and think about that and be like, well, how's it holding me back? Shouldn't I strive for it?
Yeah, I mean, you can, but what's underneath it? Perfectionism is a reaction to chronic shame. It is a response to how we manage the discomfort of chronic shame. No one will know how much I fear not being enough if I try my hardest all the time and I go above and beyond. So you're hiding.
And then how come it's so dissatisfying?
Because you're never going to reach it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that thing that I think perpetuates in a lot of different ways where it's really hard to clock when we're looking externally for validation.
Oh, yeah.
As opposed to being able to just find it from within. And it's like, it feels like everyone walks around with, my therapist calls it a worthiness wound, which I like that language a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's got to be a bit of a balance, right? Because you can't just like become a hermit and only, count on yourself and not have any social interactions and just close yourself off from human connection in an attempt to buffer from the external gaze and the need for external validation. I mean, there's a degree of healthy external validation and, scaffolding that we can get from others. And that's the social support that we get from being in community. But when that is the only thing, then you lose that attachment to self. So you really have to kind of navigate that fine line.
When you have cases of people who seem to suffer from it, what does that kind of look like? And what are the initial steps to take for them to just internally grasp that's their problem?
Yeah, I mean, that's like pretty much all of my clients.
Right?
Because I specialize in overthinking overachievers. So a lot of times people come to me when they have reached some sort of external pillars of success, but they're always chasing this moving goalposts. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of just like freneticness, like flight energy, because they're always trying to prove themselves and just hit that next goalpost. And I mean, that makes them like really productive and solid workers, and they get rewarded for it in a corporate environment. But then they're like, how come I don't feel happy? Why do I feel so hollow? And so it's really helping people kind of parse out the difference between success and happiness and joy and peace and contentment, things that are more like deeply rooted. And when you're talking about success, by whose standards, by whose metrics? So people generally come in and say like, I'm having panic attacks or I have a lot of anxiety, and that's what gets them through the door. And then we start kind of understanding like, what are your beliefs that reinforce and feed into this pattern, and then can we unpack and better understand and pick and choose which values you actually want to live to and which ones you may have outgrown and can leave behind.
How much, you said something so interesting right there that just made me think of this. Like, what is the impact of our beliefs and our identity on physical manifestations of problems like anxiety and depression?
I think that there's a very interactive process, your lived experience and how you move through the world is going to shape your beliefs, and then your beliefs and how you see yourself and everyone around you is going to shape how you move through the world. So there's very much a dynamic process, and you have to acknowledge that they're both real and they're both present, and shifting one can shift the other. And it matters less where you start. You start where it's most accessible, and then hopefully you can get through all of the different spaces as you go along.
What does progress in perfectionism look like?
Being okay with being okay.
It's so simple, but yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like what's good enough? Okay, cool. I'm going to do that.
It's so funny how it becomes this like challenge in and of itself, because the people who seem to struggle the most with perfectionism, I'm talking about me and my experience with it, but I'm sure it's pretty applicable and relatable to people, where it's like, if I wasn't able to get past some of those barriers, and I'm still working on it, like there's no way I'd even be able to do something like this podcast, because I started it and like the lighting looked like shit. The audio's still not fully there. Am I doing the thumbnails wrong? This, that, and the other. And you just have to, I really like the expression, perfect is the enemy of good. You have to accept the good.
Yeah, you have to start by starting, and you have to be okay with being perceived, and you have to be okay that there's going to be people in the world who are going to be committed to misunderstanding you. Ooh. And your job is not to convince them otherwise. It's to let them misunderstand you and move on.
Find your actual people. I heard this really cool, I don't know if it's a it's a fable, I guess, or whatever, but it's like about pottery. Maybe you know it.
I don't know it.
Two groups of people were given an assignment that they had 30 days to make the perfect vase. And one group was told to make vases every single day for 30 days. And the other group was told, you have 30 days to make the perfect vase. Oh. And the group that had to make one every single day ended up with the way better one,
of course,
than the group that was trying to perfect it.
Practice makes progress. It doesn't make perfect. It makes progress.
Yeah. More so than trying to perfect the thing on the first try.
Yeah, because it's not gonna be perfect, and you have to just be okay. It's like the analogy that I use sometimes that's similar is heating up the griddle to make pancakes. You're gonna burn your first few pancakes, so you got to be okay with just burning some pancakes, and then once you get into a flow, your pancakes will be better.
At what point does encountering stress cross the line into being trauma?
Trauma is obviously has a lot of stress as part of it, but it's such a subjective experience, because two people can go through the same stressor, and then one person can cope really well and integrate it as just part of their life story, and then the other person can really have trouble with moving past it, and it gets encoded as trauma. So I really think of trauma as not the bad things that happen, but who you're with when bad things happen. So when you feel like you have social support, when you feel like you have people who can really see and hold this alongside you, and you don't feel as alone, then you tend to be able to process, move through, and integrate it as just something that happened to you in your life. But if you feel really alone and you feel really shameful, like, oh my gosh, I deserve that this thing happened, or this thing happened because of something that I did and it's my fault, and then we tend to really hang on to that and not tell people about it. That's what really encapsulates the bad events and makes it a trauma.
I'm processing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I see how it's so individual, right? How that, I guess I never thought of it. The reason I'm digesting that is the people around you portion of it. Because I'm thinking of, like, let's say a big T trauma event of something like a car accident or whatever. Oh, this is so crazy. I saw this the other night, and it didn't process as trauma, but I definitely had to like come down. I had such an insane surge of adrenaline. They're working on the Riverside exit.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
And I was on it late at night, waiting and waiting. I was waiting there for probably like 7 minutes or something. And someone decided that they didn't want to wait, or maybe there was an emergency. I don't know. And they went down the middle in between the two lanes.
Oh my gosh.
And they like hit the car in front of me, hit the car diagonal to me. I
no.
watched them hit like 5 or 6 more cars and run away.
Oh gosh.
And I was like, my first thought was, oh, thank God they didn't hit my car. I don't know how they
Right.
didn't. It was like so
Yeah,
many cars. I got so lucky.
Yeah.
And I could tell, and it's so late at night, I'm like trying to go home and go to sleep. I couldn't. I'm sitting there trying to like process this, and I don't want it to traumatize me.
Right. And you're talking about it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a big part of it. It's like the more you talk about it, the more you're able to like make sense of what happened and, you know, feel the relief, feel the gratitude, like be able to defang it a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, I'm sure when people respond to you like, oh my gosh, that's terrible, wow, you know, it's like, okay, I feel validated, and like how activating that was.
Yeah.
And then I don't feel as alone with it. All of that is just a really essential part of processing big life events so that they can become more integrated into our lives and our narratives.
And if we didn't do that initially, because maybe we didn't have the tools, the resources, the community, can you still kind of go back to that old trauma and do it?
Absolutely. Especially if it's still activating. You know, and some of these big T things that happen, you know, you talk about it, you describe the sense and the sensations and what time of day it was and what the weather was like and what you had for dinner, like all the things that kind of get like flashbulb encoded around that event. And you can just viscerally, emotionally transport your body back into that time. And that's when you have the opportunity to really work with it, you know, to really release some of it and be able to, you know, re-encode it in a way that fits better with healthier functioning.
You kind of clocked that I said I was grateful that I didn't hit. If we're talking about tools that are not related to like going to a therapist, going to someone in our community, talking to my mom or boyfriend or whoever about it, what are tools that don't involve other people that we can use to maybe help us move through it? Like, is gratitude a tool?
Gratitude is absolutely a tool. You know, I think sometimes if we only do gratitude, it's easy to kind of veer into this toxic positivity territory where it's just like, just be grateful. But yes, if you can be genuinely grateful for the small things, and it trains your mind to notice the small things that, you know, happen every day that we can be grateful for, because the way that the human brain works, it's Velcro for the bad and Teflon for the good. So we're really quick to just dismiss the good things and not even clock them. But if you have a gratitude practice, you start getting better at noticing the good. You can also just sort of move through the stress. Emily and Amelia Nagoski wrote this book called Burnout, which talks about, you know, the difference between stress and stressor. So the stressor is like, you know, the car hitting the other cars, like that's really stressful because that's what happened and you saw that. But the stress continues to live in your body even after you're no longer in that environment. So in order to move through the actual stress, there's a list of like 7 things that they recommend. And it's you know, social connection, creative outlet, a big old cry, physical touch. I'm gonna not get them all right. I don't remember all of them, but there's a list of 7 that are part of completing the stress cycle. Oh, physical movement's a huge one. If you can, you know, get a good sweat in, because that allows your body to just really be able to process and complete the stress loop. It's what animals do. You know, when they escape a trap, they shake and they burrow and they rest. They don't just keep moving as if nothing happened.
I'm glad you said that. I always will joke that if I don't move my body and go to the gym or do whatever, and because I'm a dog owner, I'm like, that's my human zoomies.
Yes.
I need to get my human zoomies out.
Absolutely. It's such an important part of a lot of people's, I mean, really everyone's wellness routines.
Yeah.
But not everyone has it as part of their wellness routines. That's why when the studies show like the impact of exercise or dance on depressive symptoms compared to like even a medication, you know, they're comparable. It's very powerful to move through some of that physical activation.
Depression hates a moving target.
Yep, it's true. Gotta outrun it.
Is there some kind of warning sign, maybe it's subtle, that our body gives us before we hit burnout so that we could stop it in its tracks?
Yeah. And there's a lot of warning signs, when you're not sleeping as well, when you're not having the same kind of appetite, either you're binging or you're not hungry, same with sleep, either you're sleeping a lot or not being able to sleep. When you feel anhedonic, when the things that usually make you happy, you have no interest in, and you don't want to engage in the wellness routines that do make you better, when you start isolating yourself. And the big difference between like burnout and just like a stressor is like it tends to be more pervasive, and people are always shocked at how long it takes to actually move through burnout and to recover from it, because it didn't take you overnight to get there, so it's not going to take you overnight to get out of it.
Is there something you've clocked that Western psychology gets really wrong about perfectionism?
I mean, there's so many things I've clocked that Western psychology gets wrong. Oh gosh. I think, Western psychology and just Western societies really reward perfectionism. And I think about, all of these kind of socially sanctioned shame adaptations, things that we do in response to our feelings of shame that get rewarded because they are helpful for other people, such as overwork, people pleasing, perfectionism. These are all things that make us more productive and make us go above and beyond in our work environments and make us self-sacrifice and self-abandon for the betterment of some sort of external greater good. But it's not sustainable. We're not able to manufacture the fuel that it takes to do this without a lot of wear and tear on our bodies. And so a lot of times people don't even recognize that perfectionism is something that may be limiting or a problem because they get rewarded at work for it.
Right. Yeah, that's so true.
Or in their relationships, right? Like you're the person who will always plan the activities or bring the snacks or take care of everybody else or cancel your own plans to show up for a family need in the last minute. These are things that people come to expect and do get rewarded. So then you think, oh, well, isn't it a good thing that I'm doing this?
Right. We're not stopping to pathologize like being the hero of the crew or the hero of the team at work. And
it
because
feels
it's
good.
like that.
It feels
does.
good. Yeah. And, to an extent, it is good. But at a certain point, it's going to have some costs.
You had a very strong reaction when I said, what does Western psychology get wrong? So besides perfectionism, I'd love, like, what does that bring to the front of your brain when I say that?
I mean, I think there's a lot that I have been pretty outspoken about when it comes to the limitations of Western psychology. I think just the biopsychosocial medical model of dysfunction and psychopathology really situates the problem within the individual. It gives society and the environment kind of a free pass, like, oh, that's a you problem. You got to pull yourself up by the bootstraps, or you didn't allocate your resources correctly, or whatever. Like it makes the problem an individual problem. So the environment and the systems that reinforce and enable this to happen in the first place don't have to change. It very much like contextualizes healing as something that happens in a silo, something that you can put an insurance code on and reimburse in 16 sessions. It doesn't take into account the ebb and flow of human experience. It doesn't take into account that there's so many complementary, ancestral, ancient forms of healing and wisdom that are absolutely powerful. Therapy does not have a monopoly on healing, and neither does psychotropic medications. They can both absolutely be very valuable and helpful, but there are so many different ways to heal. And it doesn't take into account the necessity of true community, not just a friend group and not just a family that you feel beholden to, but people that you aren't necessarily friends with, but then you're still kind of socially responsible to, because you also live in this community and want it to be good for, everybody. So I think there's a lot of Western psychology that makes it very individualistic and decontextualized, and really considers your own healing and trauma as like starting and ending with yourself. And it doesn't. It's generational, it's contextual, it's cultural, it's societal. And all of these factors play a role in individual wellness. And we really see that, now more than ever.
Having said that, is there a healing modality that you see in Western culture that you would throw out the window if you had the chance?
I actually think healing modalities are all valuable. Maybe not for everybody, and maybe not forever. A lot of times people get to the process of self-growth and healing through one modality. And if that's going to be your entry point, even if you outgrow it and you evolve and find other ways to heal, then that's okay. Then that served its purpose. It's still valuable. So I think there's definitely a not one size fits all approach to it. But I don't think I could just like straight up say that any modality is just entirely trash.
That's good.
Yeah,
I like that a lot. Yeah. What's the difference between going to therapy, especially people who have gone for a while and speak the therapy speak and all that, going, integrating what you're learning in the room versus just using it to get better at having language for your pain?
Yeah. I think a lot of times when people think of like self-optimization as a never-ending task, they get into this loop of like, oh my God, I need to be capitalistic with my healing. And that's not good for anyone. That's not how it's supposed to be. I think it's great to take breaks from therapy. It's great to just let shit percolate and settle and integrate. And it's also so important to get out of your head. A lot of traditional talk therapy is so cerebral. And so to the point where you can clock all your patterns, you know exactly what you're doing as you're doing it, and it doesn't change you from doing it. True healing involves risk. It involves interpersonal vulnerability. It involves you going out into the world and generalizing the skills you learned and trying something different and new in a way that feels resonant and safe, that you're ready for. And a lot of therapy and the relationship that you build in therapy affords you the empowerment and the relational space to be able to try these other new things. But ultimately, you still have to go out there and try these new things. You can't just go to therapy every week and like vent about it. And even if you do have like a great relationship with your therapist, and that's a precious, important relationship, you got to be able to generalize that to other members in your life and community, because therapists are not in your life, not in your day-to-day life anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there is that thing of even myself, and I'm so pro therapy to the point where I'm like, oh, it's kind of a bit of a red flag if someone's never wondered. It's really hard for me to be like,
aren't you curious?
You think nothing needs to work? That kind of thing. But I'm curious, I guess the opposite of that is, at what point is it like, can someone have had too much therapy where it becomes a point of diminishing returns?
Sure. I think that's an important conversation that I hope therapists are having with their clients, because when you kind of notice a plateau, it's a good time to check in and be like, hey, is this working? What's working? What's not working? Am I keeping you safe and comfortable, or am I challenging you to grow? Do I have permission and consent to continue to challenge you? Do you need to see a different therapist with maybe a different modality or approach? Have you outgrown this relational container and it's onto a different one? And none of that is a failure. It's just a completion.
Yeah.
It's, with every relationship, sometimes you outgrow the container and it's time to move on, and that's okay. It's not a failure. So I think it's important to be able to have those conversations with your therapist on an ongoing basis. And, hopefully your therapist is also invested in, true growth, to be able to call you out on that once they notice that you are feeling a little bit more stuck. But the second part of it is, maybe you're talking all up this great stuff in therapy, but then what are you actually bringing back and implementing? What are you actioning on? What are you trying? Again, it goes back to that place of interpersonal risk and vulnerability. You have to be willing to not avoid the things that you need to confront in your life, and nobody can do that work except for you.
What do you say when you have, because I'm sure you've had a million of them, people who do intellectualize the shit out of their emotions?
Oh gosh, I mean, that's my bread and butter, because it does come with the overthinking, overachieving, right? Because it's all like head and then action and not heart and beliefs and emotions. We slow down. We slow all the way down. Okay, what just happened here? What just happened between us? What just happened within you? What did you notice? And I try to help them tap into the somatics of what they're experiencing. And then sometimes I'll encourage them to try something different, maybe in a complementary way, or, taking a break from, our work together, so they can do something that's more experiential, like EMDR, or sometimes I tell them to like go dance, or like go do improv, or things that will just push them to grow relationally. Go on a date, things that are gonna feel more risky, and then they have an opportunity to get some like new fodder that they can work through, and then we can try to get them there more experientially and emotionally.
Yeah,
bottom up.
Because being embodied is such a huge part of it, and I think you can't even really, as much as we can intellectualize, and I'm speaking about myself, my feelings, like, until I get embodied, I don't even know what it is I'm feeling until I sit there and actually feel it.
And not judge it. Just actually let it come, and not shitting all over yourself, or suppressing it, or dismissing it, or explaining it away. And that is an inherently uncomfortable process, and you kind of just have to be okay with it being uncomfortable. You can't really explain embodiment to someone in a cognitive way. It's something that you can kind of guide people to and through, but it's very much an experiential process.
It's so true. And the judgment part, because I know I suffer with what can sometimes be like debilitating metacognition, where I can't just let myself have like all. I've almost gotten to a point in my own journey where I feel like I've gotten away with, or whatever. I'm like, okay, well, I know how to do this, that, and the other, and I've spent all these years like working in a guided meditation studio and having my little morning routine, and then still, if I'm really in the thick of it and I'm really like just operating with like some of my pistons are just down because I'm so emotional, the metacognition is so strong and the judgment is so strong.
It's just like automatic thoughts. You have to like practice catching yourself. I mean, I still do it, and this is my profession, and I'm in therapy all the time, in my personal therapy, and I still do it. And like, healing is an ongoing, lifelong journey. You're never going to just arrive and get there. And even when you are in a pretty good spot, when life happens, when a grief happens, when trauma, when just things that are unexpected happen, which they inevitably will, that tests your capacity, that tests your skills and what you're capable of. And, it makes absolute sense to have some regression during those times and need a little extra support.
What I think happens sometimes, and this makes me feel even worse, it's so straightforward and obvious to me that if I go through something difficult, I've gone through something difficult. I can label that. I can put it in the difficulty bucket. What feels worse and more uncomfortable to me is when something amazing happens. Yes. And I'm like, oh, the void doesn't feel filled.
No, I mean, it's like everything's kind of anticlimactic, right? Like, this is, Brene Brown calls it foreboding joy. You got to like hoard that joy because, oh gosh, when's the other shoe going to drop? Things are too good. And then people, psych themselves out by saying like, oh, well, I'm not going to allow myself to enjoy it too much because if I do, it's going to hurt more if I lose it. But, if you're already thinking that, it's already going to hurt. You're too late. So you might as well enjoy it and celebrate it. And that is also a practice and a skill. And I would argue that joy is the most vulnerable feeling, because when you acknowledge that you care about something, there's the potential for people to withdraw it or weaponize it or use it against you somehow. And that is scary. That's so scary. But if you don't practice embracing joy and celebrating and being delighted and allowing things to delight you, you're not going to just learn how to do that. Same with like relaxing.
Yeah.
People are like, well, I'll sleep when I'm dead. I'll relax when I'm retired. Guess what? You're going to be depressed when you're retired unless you practice how to relax now, or you'll never retire.
That's so true. I've absolutely experienced like the fear of joy and the discomfort with that. The other thing that often feels so uncomfortable is that the joy I was anticipating from a thing, I get said thing, and then like it wears off so quickly, or it doesn't feel as impactful as I was anticipating. And I do understand that it is human nature to be on this like hedonic treadmill. If people, are familiar with that, like we do keep moving the goalpost. Maybe it's like an evolutionary biology thing that we do that to like keep progressing. But like, what is a tool to just be able to maybe extend the joy?
I mean, I think you have to separate joy from happiness, right? Like there's the euphoria of happiness, or the like temporary emotional state of happiness, and then there's the deeper joy of like peace and content. And you have to recognize the role of dopamine in all of this too, because anticipation is a hell of a drug. You have something to look forward to. That's why people are like always planning trips, right? They're like, that's my escape. That's my escape. But that's actually easier to do. Like, what will it take for you to plan a life that you don't need to escape from?
Oof.
Ooh, right? So dopamine is powerful, and that's the molecule of more. You just want. And that's great because you can get yourself, that like desire begets desire feeling. You can get yourself to do things that maybe you don't want to do as much because you're excited about something else. Like, gamify the shit out of that and accept that dopamine is fleeting, and that's just part of it, and that's okay.
How important is acceptance when, let's say we're in an environment that kind of tends to be a stressful environment. Maybe I'm stuck in a job that I'm trying to get out of it, but the reality is I'm like in it for a while.
Right.
And basically, to simplify my question, how do we prevent a stressful environment that we can't leave from traumatizing us?
Yeah. I mean, really building up your other supports, right? Making sure you have like, the 4 pillars of wellness, as I call it: your sleep, your nutrition, your exercise, and your social support on lock. Making sure you are well fed in these other domains and doing the things that are good for your body, just on like a very physiological level. And then being able to find meaning making outside of this job. Maybe it's volunteer, maybe it's in a relationship, maybe it's activism, whatever it is, getting involved in a way that feels fulfilling, that gives you a sense of purpose that can be separate from the work that you're paid to do. Because your life's work goes way beyond what you are paid to do.
Yeah. And even, I guess, and this sounds like this applies across the board. I just use a job as like an example.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't like your living situation,
Sure.
or, you need to get out of your relationship, or whatever it is, the stressor that you can't like snap your fingers and get away from.
Yep. Yeah. And, I think a lot of times people get complacent, right? They dissociate as a way to survive because they feel really hopeless. And that's valid. Some situations legit feel pretty hopeless. But how can you find the little grains of agency in any situation? We may not be able to have control over the outcomes. We may not be able to control other people or our environment, but we always have agency in every step of the way, and how we react and respond to these stressors and what we want to do next. And so being able to cultivate that enough where you can feel empowered, so you can slowly grow your exit strategy, no matter where that might be, is such a powerful way of helping you just not fall into that hopeless, helpless mindset, which is core to depression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to switch gears a little bit. Can you tell me about your book? Like, what inspired you? How'd you get it together? Because writing a book is like an insanely difficult task.
It was a beast. I'm so glad I did it. I'm so glad it's done. So my book is called The Hyphenated Life, Bridging the In-Between Spaces of Intersectional Identities. I've been brewing on a book for many years, and for a while I really wanted to focus on like children of immigrants or Asian Americans. And then I also inhabit a lot of additional intersectional identities that go beyond just race and immigration and culture, or like, I guess like ethnic culture. And so I couldn't find a book that really talked about these other intersections of marginalized identities like queerness and relationship orientation and neurodivergence and ability and all of these other factors that go into how we are perceived in the world and how the world perceives us and how we show up in the world. So I wanted to really kind of capture how there can be some familiar patterns for people as they're navigating these intersections, no matter what intersections they inhabit. A lot of times people go through complex trauma or have patterns of emotional neglect in their families of origins. And then that also feeds into familiar, talk tracks of fear, shame, guilt.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we kind of break free from that, but also recognize that a lot of these survival adaptations are just that. They help with our survival. So they're just tools in our toolkit that we can use sometimes, but maybe we don't need to overuse when they no longer serve us.
Did you have any aha moments about yourself as you wrote it?
Oh my gosh, so many. The whole book was, like research is me search, right? I think like, I thought about this book as like, what is your relationship to the world around you, knowing that you inhabit all of these different margins. But as even after I finished writing it, it didn't really click for me until I started talking to other people about it. This book is truly about your relationship with yourself. Like, how do you find your own agency? How do you find your own values and your own self-love and your own attachment to self in order to have a sense of groundedness around what it feels like to be in a place where you're merely fitting in versus a place where you can find true belonging, and knowing that you deserve that true belonging and being able to cultivate it in relationships vulnerably, because you can't do that in a superficial way. So really it's about your journey with yourself.
I wonder if that's a big blind spot for a lot of people, because I think we spend so much time focused on our relationships outside of ourselves and what's going on with those dynamics and how we're perceived in the world. And it's kind of like we've come full circle to the beginning of the conversation where it's like, how do you create validation for yourself from the inside out? And I was really excited to talk to you about this because, I mean, biasly, I feel like there is something to being an immigrant here and being first gen here that like you're starting on level hard.
Yes, absolutely. Because it's like, who are you, right? And it's like you are already expected to be a social chameleon from the day you arrive in this country. You have to figure out how to be palatable to your environment, how to contort yourself. And it is a lot of figuring out what the world demands of you and expects from you, that you lose sight of who you are outside of other people's expectations. And so how do you survive that? And then how do you regain that relationship with yourself so you're not constantly self-abandoning in order to find safety?
And so many cultures, and especially like I do have listeners all over the world, but like coming to America specifically to speak to my experience, it's like it's such an individual based culture here. And so coming from other cultures where it's more community based and people aren't trying to like be the flashiest thing in the room.
Right.
That seemed like a really uncomfortable adaptation for me personally, where I was like, how do I stop feeling guilty that I want so much attention? Like, where's this need for attention coming from? Does it feel authentic to me?
Yeah, I mean, probably emotional neglect. That's my guess. It's when what you don't have as a child, you gorge yourself on as an adult.
Oh,
you
yeah.
seek, right? So I don't even know anything about your history, but that's just my guess.
Well, I'm a comedian and that tells a lot, I think.
And then there's also just Wait, what was the question again?
This kind of coming from cultures, because I think a lot of cultures are not as individualized quite as like the US. So making that transition, like how much are we supposed to like accept changing about ourselves when we were brought up more so in a culture where it's more community and family based, and then you get here and like, I mean, I'm expanding, so let me have you answer this before I keep going.
Yeah, I mean, navigating the biculturalism, right? Like the collectivist culture at home, but then you go to school, you go to work, and it's this individualistic culture. And even navigating communication between the expectations to read the room versus being clear as kind and direct. There's got to be a middle ground, because I think, you know, shame in collectivist cultures is both the root, the source, and the balm to whatever it is you're doing, right? Because it caters to the lowest denominator. Like, don't rock the boat, don't stand out. But then that means you have no room for individuality, no room for self-expression. And, you know, if you do have some more of these marginalized identities, like, yeah, you can't be queer, you can't have ADHD, you can't have a different brain, right? Like, you aren't allowed to ask for accommodations. And so that's not healthy either. But then, you know, a lot of the Western individualized perspective, it's like everybody's a special snowflake and everyone needs to cater to my special needs and demands. But then if everyone has accommodations, then like nobody is able to meet anyone's, you know, needs. So there's got to be this middle ground. And I think that's when the nuance can get kind of lost, because, you know, there's some spaces where it's like, yeah, all about the community, everything. But then you kind of forget that there's a underbelly to that too. So finding that balance and where that balance may lie is going to be different for everybody.
Of course, because on one hand, it's like you don't want to go too far in the deep end with, as they call it, main character syndrome.
Yep.
But you also don't want to feel like, and this has been so many things that I've experienced guilt around in my upbringing, like, oh, you owe your family all of this and it's on you to take care of your parents and your grandparents, and they're also used to living in these like multi-generational homes and like that's not normalized here. So it's a matter of finding, okay, where does my actual authentic guilt stop and where does it start from people in my family like giving me expectation or saying there's not an expectation that I have to take care of them, but actually me feeling like there is.
Right. Yeah. And then like kind of discerning between guilt and shame, right? Did I do something bad, or am I made to feel that I am bad? And then discerning between the shame that you may feel, like, okay, I genuinely feel shame in reaction to the situation, versus being shamed, someone's injecting shame onto you, or like a guilt trip where someone doesn't want to manage their own disappointment or dissatisfaction or sadness, so they make it about you and, you know, your wrongdoings that made them feel that way. I mean, there's a lot of emotional offloading that happens in collectivist cultures in ways that are very, very normalized, but then people suffer from it. So again, everything is flawed. You just kind of have to figure out where that sweet spot is for you, and also allow that to evolve over time and over context and situations. You're not going to be the same person in every single relationship and environment, and that's okay.
How have you helped maybe yourself or other clients that are like either immigrants or first gen unpack where like the issues from the collective culture are coming from and how they're impacting them?
Yeah, I think it's really important to get a clear sense of what your values are. What are the values that you inherited from your family of origin, from your upbringing, and what are the values that still apply to the way that you want to live your life? What have you outgrown? What can you leave behind? And what do you want to cultivate or embody more of as you move forward in your life? I do a lot of acceptance commitment therapy, which is, you know, a very values-based therapy where you don't ever just like complete your values. You know, you're always working towards them. It's not like a goal. And so that gives people a sense of meaning making and purpose. And it also gives people an anchor. It's like maybe you're really tired and you don't want to go to this party, but you know, your value is friendship and community. So, okay, fine, I'll go. You know, so allowing yourself to have some clarity, or like working to cultivate that clarity, is an ongoing process.
Mm-hmm.
And then allowing yourself to outgrow and retire some things that no longer serve you.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
That is a tough one. It's going to feel bad.
I don't want to entirely shit on generational trauma and what we carry and that it's all bad, because I think some of it is good, and I'm curious, back to the like, what does Western psychology get wrong? What have we totally missed the boat on as far as things that are good from more collective cultures that we are not implementing here that might help us?
Yeah, taking care of each other, not outsourcing like care tasks to, the Uberification of everything, being able to count on a neighbor for something, showing up even when it's inconvenient, showing up even when you're tired and you don't really want to, because it's important for the relationship, and it's important to know that what goes around comes around. Really, we do not have the villages that we did historically in Western society. And women, mothers, are the ones who suffer the most and bear the brunt of that lack of support.
That's so true.
For a lot of us who are pretty, as I call it, like Americanized. So,
yeah.
Every self-help book girl,
right, yeah,
pathologize every behavior girl. And I think coming from a culture where they don't even have the capacity to pathologize their negative behavior. So I'm curious, because probably a lot of kids who feel this way about their family, kids, people in their 30s,
children of immigrants, yeah.
Children of immigrants. We go and we learn all these things, and we healed parts of ourselves.
Yep.
How the heck do we take that back to our like anti-therapy families?
Oof, I live this all the time. You can't change someone who doesn't want to change, right? You can't make anyone do anything that they don't want to do. It's easier to influence them if you planted the seeds earlier, but at the end of the day, you can only change your response to how they behave. And sometimes you can inspire them to self-care, or talk to someone, or do something different in the way that they approach their lives and their problems, because they see you thriving. That's a beautiful way of bringing it back to your family. Sometimes you just have a different reaction to their baiting behaviors, and then you break that cycle, and eventually you get to a place where everyone realizes that they no longer have that same power over you. And that is very liberating. It's scary. Sometimes there's like a death rattle, they can really have that extinction burst where they try extra hard to like kind of loop you back in. But eventually you can retain that power for yourself. And you realize that, for a lot of our elders, they truly don't have the capacity. Like, survival is the top thing, top priority. So they're just trying to, make ends meet and have maybe some time to rest in a hobby. Like, self-awareness and growth and mental health is just superfluous luxuries. It's a good reminder that healing is so political and such a luxury that not everyone can access. So some people just generally don't have the skills, and they don't know how to build a connection with you without goading you into conflict. They just know that, okay, activation and attention is better than no attention. So they try to get you to give them that attention in some ways. But gosh, there's such a difference between attention and attunement. And a lot of times when we grow up in these kind of emotionally sparse, emotionally neglectful environments, we settle for attention because it's better than not having it. But it's not a substitute for truly being seen and valued and loved and appreciated for who you are. And that comes with attunement, and that comes with connection.
Okay. Let me make sure I got this right. So there's the expression, don't go to the hardware store for milk.
Yes.
So the onus is on us if we have someone who's like, let's say even like a problematic family member, we really disagree with them on a lot of things, and they're just simply not open-minded. They're not, like you said, they're in survival mode, and they just don't have the capacity to change. But I don't want to sever the relationship either. It's an important relationship to me. So how do I navigate it feeling like it's like landmines and he's going to say something that's going to piss me off. I don't want to keep having these like conflicts that just go in circles with him.
Yeah, I mean, that's describing my relationship with my mother. We have a low contact relationship where
That's me and my dad.
Yeah, we text each other like once a week or so. We see each other once a year. I maintain the connection, so I do feel a lot of responsibility, and there is a lot of love mutually. I know she loves me the best way she knows how, and she's very loyal to that. It's not the way that I need to be loved, and in return, I love her the best way that I know how. And we miss each other. We don't necessarily like each other. We have very different perspectives on a lot of things. But I have healed enough to a place where I don't feel like she has that same power over me. And so when she starts like sending me all of her like, MAGA talking points or whatever.
Your mom and my dad are hanging out, aren't they?
Probably. There is a large contingency of immigrant MAGA people.
Yep.
Yeah. When that really happens, I'm like, okay, what is the underlying need here, right? Okay, are you nervous because I'm going to come visit soon? Should we talk about that? Should we prepare and talk about like what the meals plans are going to be, what the activities are going to be? Are you feeling lonely and you want some emotional connection? Okay, let me ask about your orchids. What recipes are you trying? Have you found any great deals online shopping? I try to like catch the emotional, reading between the lines and then meet that instead of being goaded by the, clickbait, rage bait that she throws at me.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works, but I'm only human, so.
I know, it's so crazy, the parallel to my experience, because I always say that my dad has like his 5 talking points. Yes. He talks about his house. He asks me when I'm having kids. And it's like the other things I forget, but it's always like we hit all, it's like we're playing topic bingo.
Yep.
And I'll always try to get through to him, feel like I've gotten through to him because he loves me in his way. And so he listens to me. He doesn't argue with me. That's what's crazy is he won't actually argue with me when I disagree with him. He'll hear me out and act like he remembers and appreciates and heard me.
He won't actually change.
No, he doesn't hear me at all.
Yeah. Gosh, I mean, that's the grief part, right? Like there's so much grief that is involved in being a cycle breaker and healing your, generational family of origin wounds, because you may share these like very real resident moments, and they are very real, and you need to like, bottle them up and like appreciate them and let it hit, and then not expect it to carry through to the next interaction, because they're not clocking it in the same way.
Right.
They're remembering different things about that interaction. But I will say that for the most part, it's likely mutually satisfying. They're probably also being like, oh, yay, a connection, it's a glimmer, and like celebrate it. Let that be important. But then do the grief work on your own and that doesn't necessarily shift the relationship or grow the skills or capacity for them to meet me in a different place.
Yeah. It's a lot of acceptance work on us.
That sucks. And that hurts.
Suck.
Yeah.
What does it look like then to know that, I'm setting a boundary versus I'm avoiding a difficult conversation? Where's the line?
I mean, ultimately, I think boundaries are something that you express. If you don't express it, then it's just a wish. Boundaries don't require the other person to do anything. It is something that you do in response to their lack of change or action. You hope that they would do something, but if they don't, then it's on you to enforce that boundary.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Otherwise, it's a rule. It's a demand, The boundaries is generally, they all boil down to like less access to you in some ways. So I think those are the important things to keep in mind about what is a boundary versus a rule, a demand, a wish, and something else. What was the other thing that you mentioned besides boundary?
I was trying to think of a question and I thought of it, but a little more on boundaries, because I think it's one of those things where it's like a weaponized therapy term where people...
Avoidance. You said avoidance.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. I think a true boundary comes after you have confronted the avoidance. Because if you're avoiding the conversation, then it's a wish.
Yeah.
You know, they don't know that you want this thing to happen. They don't know what's going to happen to the relationship if they don't behave in that way. Then you're just slowly fizzle and fading or ghosting somebody. That's not a boundary. That's avoidance. Yeah, boundaries come after you confront the avoidance.
That's good, because it is one of those things people weaponize where they just decide, oh, I'm going to cut this person off. I'm not going to talk to them about this thing or the other, sweep it under the rug, and then they call it a boundary.
Yeah. And it's sometimes the person that you're engaging with generally isn't safe.
Yeah.
You know, they genuinely cannot be present for that conversation. So then you have no choice but to go. It's like someone who was like assaulted you or is continuously abusive or will not take any sort of feedback or, you know, self-reflect. Okay, then you have no choice but to cut them off. But you at least tried. You have to at least try, or you just don't want to preserve the relationship. It's not worth it to you. You don't want this person in your life. Okay, then sure, cut them off. But that's not a boundary. That's ghosting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People really like to... I don't think they're confusing the two. I think they're intentionally using one to try to mask the other.
Gosh, weaponized therapy speak is such a thing.
Yeah, it really is. Is there a good way to clock it if it's being used on us?
I mean, when you're like talking around in circles, right? And you're like, people are saying a lot of words, but they're saying a whole lot of nothing. You're like, what are you saying? You know, that's like, let's pause, okay? Like, what is your key takeaway point? What are you asking me to do? What are you trying to tell me that you want to do? Tell me what you like or don't like. Let's start there. That's so hard for people.
Yeah.
Because they have to own it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's much easier to be like, well, due to the capacity limitations of my current bandwidth, I will be unavailable for what? I don't want to do that. That's what you're trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah. Boundaries is one that's super abused and overused. I think
narcissism.
I was literally gonna say people are throwing the word narcissism around really willy-nilly these days.
Yep. And you know, there is such a thing as healthy narcissism, and we should all have it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like we all need to have some self-regard of worthiness that we don't allow people to treat us like shit. And that is technically narcissism. And people weaponize that. How dare they expect me to treat them with dignity and respect, you know? They said I can't talk to them like that. They're so narcissistic. Well, I mean, yeah, technically, but also maybe you should reflect on the way you're talking to them.
I think that going back to like our families of origin, the survival thing is so predominant in these cultures. And with my background, which is like we're from Ukraine, it was all the USSR, I just like kind of just paint it all as we're Soviets, we're Russian speaking Soviets. That's how I consider it. It really is such a culture of if you're stupid, you die. Like that is their belief through and through. So I and still deal with this, and I'm like getting goosebumps as I talk about this, view stupidity as like such an existential threat. And so when I judge myself for like having done something stupid, or I perceive that somebody's doing something stupid around me, that like it's incredible how much that generational trauma like comes too.
Yeah, I mean, is it stupid or is it foolish or is it immature? Are there other ways to conceptualize or think about it? You know, how are people supposed to know that what they're doing is stupid if they've never done it before? If no one has ever taught them? Yeah. But it's so much easier to say like, oh, well, I would never do that because it creates this false sense of safety. Random bad things can't happen to me. They happen to them because they deserved it or they did something stupid. It's an attempt to control.
Do you think that there is kind of a commonality with like children of immigrants as far as like what our biggest challenges are?
Yeah. So if you think about what it takes for people to leave everything that they know, leave their entire culture, their language, their community, their food, their familiarity in pursuit of a better life. Not everyone makes that choice. So in order for you to even make the decision to immigrate, there is something about you as a person or the horrificness of that environment that necessitates that you leave in order to survive. So when you bring that to this new land, I mean, every immigration story is a trauma story, even when it's a success and, overcoming story. Two things can be simultaneously true. And so when you think about our parents and our elders who made that trek and made that decision, there is a degree of grit and a degree of determination and also a degree of alignment to the dominant views because that's what they think is possible for them. That's what they're striving for and trying to reach. That they're going to really want to conform because that's how they know to create a better life. They had to have that determination, and then they passed that on to us, colored with the trauma of everything it took for them to leave everything they knew. So we carry that. There is a commonality for children of immigrants, third culture kids, whatever you want to call us, around like education, striving, meritocracy, hard work, frugalness, because it lives in our bones.
I know I am always compelled that I have to honor the sacrifice and live up to why they left everything. And to the point where it becomes like sometimes I do think of that and I so appreciate that. I think I won't like sweat over the small stuff sometimes because I always kind of go to, well, at least I'm not in Ukraine. How blessed am I? And dismissive of my problems because of that.
Yeah, but it's like, it's so fascinating how like scarcity, for example, just shows up, right? Like my husband's always so mad at me because I hate to throw away food. Like food waste is such a thing because it's in my bones. And so, we'll have leftovers and I'm like, save it. He's like, are you going to eat it? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe. He's like, only save it if you're going to eat it. I'm like, I'll eat it. And then inevitably we just save it and throw it away a few days later. Because I'm like, oh, I'm not actually going to eat that. But it's because it's the scarcity that runs so deep. And then like my daughter, who has like never had any sort of scarcity in her lived experience, she's like, do we have enough money for my college? Like she's worried about these things, even though she's herself has never encountered it. Like there's some generational trauma that is very real. Yeah.
If you had the power to help everyone in the world set aside one of their most limiting beliefs, what would it be?
Oh gosh. This is something I say in the book at the very beginning, at the very end. This is something that I try to instill in my children and my clients. It's you're always enough and never too much. I think about how much of a privilege and just like a boost up in life it is to have parents who love you unconditionally and who believe in you and who see you, who truly, truly see you and cultivate and allow you to become who you are. They're like, I'm right here alongside you, and my job is to help you discover what it is that you're passionate about so we can pursue those interests and I can celebrate you and I can delight in watching you grow. That is the biggest gift that we can have in life. And it sets the template up for so much healthier relationships to yourself, to other people, to work, to scarcity, to achievement, to everything. That is what I hope everyone can have access to.
Well, that's beautiful. This is a great place to wrap it up. Dr. Han, please tell people where they can learn more about what you're doing. Share the details for like the upcoming of the book.
Yeah, so I am touring right now. I'll be in New York, Chicago, Denver, Houston, and LA through October. The book is called The Hyphenated Life. It's available everywhere books are sold. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok as Dr. Han Ren, or my website, drhanren.com. I also have a group private practice here in Austin called Pivot Psychology.
Very cool. This was so much fun. Thank you for talking to me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Bye.
If you know somebody that would enjoy this episode, feel free to share it with them. And thank you for listening to Galina Ravina Podcastina, the show where I try to be the person my dog thinks I am. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. See you on the next one.